I've seen a lot of old jacked men doing calisthenics on the internet, and you probably have also seen them. If they do it, then it must mean that it is great for their joints. Otherwise, we wouldn't see them doing them, right? Then it must be because calisthenics is great for longevity and health. We understand that as we age, we lose muscle, bone mass, and other tissues. Basically, we become weaker as a result of aging. As a result of that, we arrive at the realization that you can no longer strive for absolute strength gains, because simply put, your time to consistently increase the weight and progressive overload has simply vanished. However, as you age, how do you manage the load according to your aging joints? Compared to an external weight that you can change to your liking, the body seems to regulate itself as we age. Despite the decrease of strength that a consistent loss of muscle and bone mass over the years causes, the loss of muscle and bone mass also means something else: a body weight decrease. The negative effects of losing strength caused by a loss of muscle and bone mass is partially offset by the weight loss that it implies, making you absolutely weaker but also lighter. Basically, calisthenics is exercises with your own body weight. But as you lose strength as you age, you are also becoming lighter. Because of that, the load we do also becomes lighter, which basically means less stress for your joints. If you are lighter, then moving your own body is easier, even if you are weaker. In a way, this shows to some extent that our own bodies prioritize moving itself other than moving external things. Maybe it is smarter to run than to always fight, and I guess the older you are, the more this applies. If you have ever bulked while doing calisthenics, you will know that even a 10-pound difference can make a huge difference in how difficult an exercise like dips and pull-ups can be. Even if the difference is noticeable on one rep, it adds up and accumulates over time. Even if bulking increases your absolute strength, this absolute strength increase rarely helps you in calisthenics, because even if you are stronger, you also become heavier, and the opposite dynamic occurs when you lose weight or cut. Then, it is not unreasonable to expect that losing muscle mass and bone mass is somewhat offset by the loss of weight that it implies. Not only this dynamic of losing weight makes calisthenics great for longevity, but also the self-limiting weight of a lot of calisthenic exercises. As you know, there is no direct way to progressive overload in its true sense in calisthenics, meaning adding weight. Sure, you can change technique, do different variations like archer ones, learn harder exercises, or play with levers. However, many of these progressive overload methods require learning techniques or are borderline too difficult. For example, you might jump from a push-up to a one-arm push-up. However, the one-arm push-up might be so difficult that you are discouraged to the point of going back to normal push-ups, preventing you from attempting something that will have a bigger margin of injury over the long run. This makes these styles of progressive overload somewhat inconvenient and tedious, which is actually good for all people. I guess the true problem with increasing weight or difficulty of an exercise is, at least for the most part, a bad management and appliance of it. In other words, a beginner is enthusiastic and might increase the weight too frequently and too soon, which will in the long run put a bigger stress on his joints. But aging people's joints are even more limited, and maybe an apparently reasonable increase of weight that wouldn't have a negative consequence on a young guy will have catastrophic effects on the joints of an aging man. By simply making progressive overload tedious and inconvenient, you basically strip it from the equation, which means that the joints have less stress in the long run. Lighter load means less chances of injury. In a way, most of my injuries were caused by chasing skills or basically progressive overload that is too soon or frequent, basically exposing my body to something that it wasn't ready to over a long time, or not recovering well. Once we strip the options of true progressive overload, we have only one option: increase reps and sets. And high reps is healing for the body. High reps require a bigger work for the cardiovascular system in general, which is a win. High reps involve simply doing it more, which brings more blood to the muscles over a longer period of time, which is great because basically more blood is circulating to your muscles. And since blood carries nutrients, I don't think it is unreasonable to believe that your joints benefit a lot from the pump that high reps can give without the stress of heavy loads. Aside from high reps, calisthenics incentivizes leanness for performance. In weightlifting, there is a positive feedback loop when you bulk. You gain weight, you gain more muscle, you get absolutely stronger. Mass moves mass. However, the more extreme your weight gain is, the more unhealthy this is. To some extent, you are rewarded for being unhealthy. However, an opposite direction is found in calisthenics. The lighter you are, the better you will perform. By incentivizing losing weight, an old man can put less stress on his joints in his everyday life, while he sees his numbers on dips, pull-ups, and push-ups increase. You can also become unhealthy if you are too lean, but I will say this is way harder to do than gaining weight, especially because obesity is a greater problem. Another great reason calisthenics is great for longevity is back injuries. By simply not loading up your spine on squats or any kind of lift, you basically don't need to worry about it. Not only that, but you're actually depressing your spine in movements like pull-ups, which I guess will be really good for old people. Maybe this is why we see a lot of old men doing calisthenics.